So many people in the holistic space say that healing your gut is paramount when it comes to your overall health. But what the heck does that actually mean? Stay tuned to this episode to find out more. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. This is the Sarah Kleiner Wellness YouTube channel. And today I'm talking with my friend Steve Wright about what it actually means to heal your gut. Now, everything we talk about is going to be linked down in the show notes for you. So make sure you check out those resources as well as the playlist I'm going to link that have all the conversations I've ever done with Steve. We've talked about everything from hair loss to histamine intolerance to hormones and how it relates to the gut. But today, I just wanted to do a broad overview of all these topics of what this means to actually heal your gut. So again, check out those resources down in the show notes. All of Steve's information is there as well. And before we jump into today's episode, quick little thank you to a couple sponsors. The first one is going to be Viva. Now, gut health and circadian health are actually intricately linked. And having poor circadian health can absolutely contribute to poor gut health. So Viva is my go-to source for protecting my circadian rhythms with their circadian glasses. You can use my code YOGI to save 15% over at Viva. Again, link is down in the show notes. Second sponsor of today's episode is Optimal Carnivore. I'm a huge fan of their bone and joint restore product. Absolutely fantastic for helping me stay on the move with a new baby and just keeping all of my joints and bones super strong and healthy. Sometimes we miss these vital nutrients from our diet. And so adding these Optimal Carnivore supplements can be super, super helpful. They're all natural, no additives, and you can use my code Carnivore uppercase Y to save 10% over at Optimal Carnivore. Thanks again for listening to today's episode, and let's jump on into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I am excited to have a friend of mine, a returning guest, Steve Wright, here today. We're going to talk about the gut as we always do. Thank you for being here, Steve.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm happy to be back. And I always love our chats. We always end up in unique, wonderful places that I think people don't expect.
I agree. And it's funny. I get such great feedback from our conversations. And so it's always good to sit down and just talk gut health because it's just essential in our overall health. And if your gut's not happy, I mean, your whole body is really unhappy, right?
I mean, yeah, that's definitely been my lived experience as somebody who's had gut issues on and off pretty much my whole life. But yeah, I have to have a saying like, it's just really hard to be a good person, to be nice to your family, to other people that aren't your family, if you're like totally constipated or if you're running to the bathroom and having diarrhea. Like it just drains you as a person. It's easy to be angry because you're frustrated with your own body. And so it is a little meta and it's a little detached in some ways, but I do think if we had a lot less digestive problems, there might be a little less anger in the world.
I think you're right. And that's probably one of the things I get messaged about the most. We were just talking before I hit record. And I was expressing to you that, I've got a lot of people that kind of come through my courses and look at my programs, and I get a lot of frequently asked questions about the gut. So hopefully we can tackle some of those today. But, probably the biggest one is the issues with food intolerances that people have. And, my story is going all the way to carnivore. And that was helpful for me to really get rid of a lot of the inflammation, a lot of problems. But then, that's just for a lot of people, a difficult way to eat the rest of your life. And I feel like it's somewhat questionable as if it's, could be a healthy thing for people to be doing the rest of their life also. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about food intolerances, reintroductions, all of that stuff.
Well, just to start with, I want to set the table that I am personally a hedonist. So I love food. I love sugar. I love gluten. I love all the things. Now I pretty much avoid most of those things on a regular basis because they don't agree with me, but like you can never replace the stickiness quality of a gluten pretzel or something like that. And sugar does amazing things to our brain if you do it in, small quantities, infrequently throughout the year. So I say that to kind of be shocking and say, I hope that you have the ability to eat whatever you want, whenever you want. Now, obviously do that within the guidance that you're teaching everybody, which is like, if you're doing this against the rhythm of nature and the rhythm of light, you're going to pay a price for that. Doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
But the optionality to be exposed to dairy or be exposed to vegetables or FODMAPs or plant matter or animal matter and not have a health crisis or a health meltdown, even if you have to do it for a week or two, that's within, I think, everybody's, like every actual body's ability, if everything's working properly. And so the elimination, I almost think of it as an elimination diet paradox, the elimination paradox at this point, because what I experienced is similar to what you experienced. When I eliminated almost everything and I went down to like meats, fruits, and vegetables, my bloating got cut by 50, 80% in like 7 days. And this was something that was debilitating. You cut all the way down to carnivore and felt amazing. And I think a lot of people have many stories, and sometimes they're even cascading. Like they might cut out gluten and dairy, feel a little better, then feel worse, then they go carnivore or something like that, and then they feel better but only feel worse. And that's the paradox, is that these elimination protocols do support us in the short term, but in the long term there are consequences. And oftentimes it seems like for the majority of users, you end up more reactive to your food and to the environment than you were when you started the whole thing, which is really messed up and confusing and frustrating for the people that it happens to. Now, don't get me wrong. There's like 10 to 15% of people, I call them mild cases. They go on an elimination diet, they go paleo or something, and they feel amazing. And for the rest of their life, they're like solid, right? They can add foods back in, they're good to go. But most of us, suffer because we stay too long and we already have some underlying health, interactions. And what happens when we eliminate foods, a few things happen. One is your body will stop doing anything it can. So like, for instance, if you're bedridden, it will start eating your muscle away the first day. Like you will start losing a pound of muscle almost a day, every day you're bedridden, because your body's like, hey, we don't need this anymore. We don't use it. And so if you're not eating certain food groups, you are going to downregulate your digestive enzyme production. Your microbiome is going to change, and the microbiome enzymes that are needed to break down that food and feed certain colonies inside your gut will completely change. And if you're on that diet for 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 24, a year or two, you've really kind of given your body signals that we don't do that anymore. And so when it's time to reintroduce foods, I hope you can just imagine that, feel into that emotionally, because we need to give the body a lot of support to say, hey, we're going in another direction. And there's some things that you may have forgotten how to do for a little while. And so that's where if you're trying to increase the range of your diet, even just from like carnivore out to a certain number of food groups, maybe some starches or maybe just some vegetables or something like that, you're likely going to be very supportive to your body if you use a digestive enzyme. Like if you don't do that for a bridge period of like 4 to 8 weeks, you're kind of just, I don't know. It's like if you were 300 pounds, and you just started running every day, like your knees are going to hurt, like your lungs are going to burn. You might even injure yourself because the body was not ready. And so there's more things that we could dig into about like how your like the membrane in your gut and the potential leaky gut issues might not be ready for it as well. But just at a basic level, you've downregulated that enzyme production in those systems. And if you don't give your body 4 to 8 weeks of transitionary support, I think you're just asking to have it not work.
Oh, yeah. That's what I see a lot of is people that, they've done a specific diet for a long time, be it, I'm getting a lot more now that I've kind of changed my whole branding over to Sarah Kleiner Wellness. I'm getting more plant-based people now who want to eat animal protein. And they're just like, I want to eat this because I know I probably need to, but I can't. Like I can't digest it. I feel sick. I feel heavy. Like, and I'm like, yeah, because it's like a muscle you just don't have anymore. And the things that you have in your store, your HCl and your enzymes, I'm always kind of pushing them towards those things because number one, they have probably got very low stomach acid because when you eat meat, your body is going to naturally, hopefully, make more stomach acid. And then they're missing the enzymes in their gut that were used to digest meat. So these are not things people necessarily have to do like forever, but they can be helpful for bridges of time, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now, look, you might have lived a life where like like if you're a diabetic too long, you can destroy your pancreas, right? And you might need to have insulin support or something. If your thyroid is too eaten up by autoimmune conditions, you might need thyroid support the rest of your life. So there is a point in time where you get too sick digestively and you may need enzymes or HCl the rest of your life. That's not the majority of people, and that's not even the majority of people that follow you or me. Most of us can recover if we give our bodies time and attention to recover. And so I would say, yeah, like 6 to 12 months sort of is like the longer bridges. That's the majority of people where they're retraining their body how to eat meat. They're retraining the body how to deal with fat. They're retraining the body how to deal with carbohydrates and starches and polyphenols. And that there's like a short bridge, like maybe like a 4 to 12 week bridge where the body's going through all these shocks, the microbiome's changing, the enzyme production is changing. After you can tolerate that food, then you're going to top up a lot of nutrition reservoirs or amounts that you might be low in. Because of your previous ways of living. So then you're going to have 3 to 6 months of stabilization where you're like, oh my gosh, my B12 was low. And now that I'm eating animal products, I'm getting a lot more B12 or, something along that lines. And then after that phase is kind of the last transitional bridge where I would start playing around with what I call a pill stop, which is where you just stop using your enzymes for a week. See what happens. Stop using your HCl guard for a week and see what happens. I didn't design these products for you to take them for the rest of your life. I designed them for myself as well as for others because I was really frustrated with the options out there. And I don't feel like the story of supporting the mechanics of digestion is being told. And so if you don't need the products, I hope you stop taking them and spend that money on something else like super freaking cool, like cold therapy or light therapy, or, there's like 100 biohacks I wish I had time to test. So take that money and repurpose it, go on vacation, do something else with it.
Yeah, go on vacation and relax. And that's the biggest biohack you can do. I think for some people, it's like, yeah, you can go spend all this money on these biohacking tools, but really you probably just need to go freaking relax if you can for a little while, get out of your environment, get out of the busyness and a lot of things will shift. Yeah, I think that's such an important thing for people to know is like, we're not saying it has to be like a lifelong permanent thing and you just need some help. The whole, like in the holistic space, this blanket term gets thrown out all the time. Heal your gut, heal your gut. My gut is healing. I'm healing my gut. And I'm like, what the heck does that actually mean? Like, does that mean we have to go take a bunch of freaking probiotics? Does that mean I'm doing parasite cleanses, which those are like, every time I open my Instagram, it's like somebody is like fear mongering about this parasite that's like ruining your life or whatever. I'm like, what do you consider the term healing your gut? What do you consider that to mean in the framework of, I feel like you're a gut health expert. So anyone listening that's like just kind of confused by this blanket terminology, how would you break that down for people?
Yeah. So I mean, this might sound like I'm copping out. It might sound offensive. It might sound a lot of things depending on where someone is in their health journey. But you got to know that this is year 15 or something like that for me. And so I've been through a lot of waves of my own enthusiasm and excitement and failure, and then rebuilding, and then winning, and then losing, and thinking that this is the answer, and it's not. It's always true, and it's always partial. And so just know that wherever you are is great. And if you're evangelical about carnivore or parasite cleanses, great. If it helped you, I believe you. I'm not arguing with you. And what I'm saying is the definition that I hold for myself and for everybody in the world is resiliency. It's the ability to process incoming food, turn it into nutrition, and do it without pain, and have a daily bowel movement that's healthy. That's a healthy gut. That's healing your gut. I'm not saying that you're allowed to eat gluten every day. You're not eating croissants for breakfast and gluten-free pizza you cooked at home with special pizza sauce and red wine every night. That's not how I'm defining it. I'm saying that you have a large set of nutritionally dense foods that you're eating on a regular basis, and you're having a bowel movement every day. You're not having pain, and you're meeting those nutritional needs. And then if it's date night once a month, or if the kids win the Little League game, you go out and you get some ice cream, and you're not stuck up all night farting and stuck on the toilet the next day. Or the girlfriends call, someone's had a bad week, you go out for a few glasses of wine and it's all good. Like, have some corn tortillas. It's not going to kill you. That's my goal of a healthy gut that can kind of respond to the world.
I like that because I love so many people in the carnivore community. And I think there's a lot of great benefits for doing a diet like that, and helpful, and a lot of wonderful things being talked about there in that community. But I also work with tons and tons and tons of people that come from all backgrounds. And, some people do want to have a slice of birthday cake at a party, or be able to enjoy, like you said, some corn tortillas if you go to a Mexican restaurant or something, like if you're meeting friends out. Most people don't want to just eat their meals, cooking them at home for themselves for the rest of their lives. Right. And if you do, that's cool. I'm not hating on you for that. That's pretty much what I do. Like, especially with a new baby, like I haven't been out to a restaurant in a really long, definitely not since he was born. So that is kind of the way that I live my life. But I know just from talking with so many different people that that's not practical for them. So that's going to look different for everyone though, right? Like their pathway to healing the gut. Is there, I guess, kind of a general pathway that you take people down when they're trying to heal their gut?
Yeah. So we have to then, and this is how I think about solving all problems and all equations. We have to think about the conditions that allow that outcome. So what needs to be happening in your body to allow what we just talked about? And so then after we talk about those conditions, which we will in a second here, you just go one by one and you look at each component of the equation and you say, hey, is there any gains I could make here? Is there any improvement that's possible? Or does this variable not really matter for me? And so when it comes to the gut, I think the most thorough way to do it, and if I could lock everybody in handcuffs and force them down this path, this is the path I would choose for them. But of course, as you just mentioned, everybody lives in different cities around the world, different countries. They have different family arrangements. They have different travel. They have different work. So it's not going to be based on that. It's going to be based on whatever works for your journey. But in general, I like to go top to bottom. So I like to start with stomach acid, because I do believe, and I can argue and die on the hill of arguing, that if your stomach acid is correctly acidified, you will break down your proteins. You will detoxify your food from incoming bugs. You will open up minerals and B vitamins, all these things for absorption in the small intestine, and you will trigger better and more powerful digestive enzyme release and activation. And the speed in your digestion, whether you trend towards constipation or diarrhea, will be more normal the more normal your stomach acid is. So I do believe that the stomach acid is one of those linchpins that if it's wrong, you're going to take supplements till you're blue in the face. You're going to be chasing diets till you're 90, trying to figure this out. Like, I have emails from 9-year-olds who just discovered HCL guard.
Wow.
And it's changing their lives. And so for less than $50, you can find out, does it matter for you? And if it doesn't matter, you can get your money back. And so I would always say start at the stomach, because it's so foundational to every stage thereafter. After that, I am a huge believer in checking for digestive enzyme, insufficiency or need for support. And so trying something with whole enzymes, try and double or triple the dose, just see what happens, especially if you're adding more foods in, or just having a bottle inside your cabinet, like for holiday season, or for,
we're headed for emergencies.
Exactly.
Like, oops. Yeah.
Like, okay, like, so someone calls you and they're like in the neighborhood and they're like, hey, come over for this cookout, and you don't know the quality of their meat, you don't know the quality, but like it's kind of insulting to be like, well, I brought my own. Can I have a corner of the grill? I don't like you. I mean, I like you, but I don't like you, or I don't trust you. Like, those are the conversations you have to have if you want to do that kind of life. Or maybe you have some extra whole enzyme and you can just pop like 4 of them on your way over and kind of, have a little bit more peace of mind and probably some better digestion in case something did get cross-contaminated. After that, I'm a huge believer in butyrate status. And I believe that butyric acid is the keeper of the gut. So if your gut is a wreck, if your microbiome is a wreck, I can pretty much tell you that your butyric acid production and metabolism from the colonocytes in the upper colon, upper large intestine actually, are going to be not what they should be, if not, really disrupted. And so using something like supplementary tributyrin for, 6 to 9 months as you build up your leaky gut defense layers, as you reset the oxygen concentration in your gut to allow a better microbiome to grow, that is like a precursor to adopting more probiotics, prebiotics, polyphenols, vegetable fibers of all types. Like that will be one of the linchpins to opening up that diet when you can reset the sort of the oxygen gradient, the mucosal barrier, and then the tight junctions barriers. And so that's kind of how I think that's sort of like my core 3. And then if people have immune dysregulation, or if they are still having constipation or diarrhea, then there's accessory products that, we can bring in to support them from our company, but also from other companies, depending on, what exactly is going on.
Right. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, when they think about healing the gut, they think about probiotics. Like because there's so much advertising and marketing for probiotics. Like that's the hot thing. And I used to think that too. I'm like, oh, I need good probiotics. And it's like, well, if you don't have good stomach acid and you don't have good enzymatic function, right, then, and your gut is all like leaky, then the probiotics are not going to be helpful. It's kind of, I always say it's like, having this house with like a bunch of leaks and, functional issues, but trying to just keep changing out the furniture over and over again, thinking you're going to somehow improve the integrity of the house. And maybe it'll look a little bit nicer inside, but you're still going to have leaks when it rains and, all those sorts of things. And so we have to kind of look at gut health a little bit differently, and not just get a probiotic. That is, for a lot of people, not the solution, and can actually make things a lot worse, right?
Yeah, 100%. That you can search out on PubMed. There's a growing number of journals and case reports of probiotics gone wrong, where if you have too much of a leaky gut, or if you're in too sick of a position, you're elderly, or your immune system is really dysfunctional due to like some really extreme stuff like pandas, or like just really bad immune dysregulation, those live bugs can be too much for the body, and they can cause sepsis. They can cause like serious medical problems. Now that's really rare, but why I say that to an audience like this, who's probably not going to have that level of reaction, is that they are not always just benign, and they're not always just the first thing you should reach for. In fact, I would say after you do HCl, whole enzymes, tributyrin, I would check for immune dysregulation with holoimmune, which is a dead probiotic that has no chance of sort of colonizing or translocating across the gut and going systemic in the blood and causing these issues. It's a much safer option because it's dead. And after you do those 4, then I would switch to something like Megaspore Biotic or something like that from Microbiome Labs. Now it's time to start to bring in those powerful research-backed probiotics. But the rest of those 50, 100 billion, like 15 strain probiotics, just save your money or get your money back, like, and stay away from that kind of stuff until, well, I wouldn't recommend it even after you've done all those steps and you kind of verified that your gut's kind of in working order. And now you're fine tuning things. But that's kind of how I see prebiotics and probiotics are sort of fine tuning things. So you might, certain probiotics will be coming out for weight loss. Some will be coming out for muscle building. Some will come out for menopause. Some will come out for eyesight. There's just really cool research-backed strains, as well as strains specifically for the gut, like the microbiome lab stuff. And so that's sort of the last step after you get the structure and the ecology of the gut working properly. Then you're like, well, what other benefits would I would like? And then go buy that brand that's formulated that option.
Perfect. And I know a question I get a ton is, and I know because we've talked about these things before, but kind of thinking about all three things that you talked about. Number one, apple cider vinegar. Number two, bitters. And then number three, butter. So I'd love to kind of go through those, because I'll get a comment or a message. Well, I don't need those things. I'm just going to do apple cider vinegar, bitters, and eat a lot of butter. So let's kind of talk about those three things.
Yeah. So the first one's ACV, right? So apple cider vinegar. Look, if you're wondering if you have low stomach acid, you can try a shot of ACV before your next meal, like later today. And if you feel better afterwards, that's a good sign you don't have enough acid in your stomach, because the pH of apple cider vinegar is right around a 2.45 or 4.9, something like that. Now, your stomach is trying to get down to a 1.5. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but the pH scale is logarithmic. So it's actually a lot. And so the problem with using ACV for specifically low stomach acid, there's other studies on maybe some blood sugar dysregulation stuff and maybe some mild, very mild weight loss stuff. Using it on that kind of stuff, using it because you like the taste of it, great. But if we're talking specifically stomach acid production and regulation, it's never going to get down to 1.5, right? You need an actual acid like hydrochloride, which is in the capsules, betaine HCl. You actually need that low acid to drive the pH deep enough and low enough. So that's my only sort of use it if you love it, but you're definitely not doing the same thing as betaine HCl. They're two different things.
Just not as strong enough. It's not going to be strong enough for most people, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, so if you have a super mild case, then maybe, but a lot of people are going to need to go a little step further, maybe do an HCl challenge and start using some HCl. Again, it's not a permanent thing. For me, I think I used it about 6 months and then I was able to come completely off of it and was fine. But I had been suffering from low stomach acid for years. And it's again, we talked about these parasite cleanses that everyone's all hot on right now. And it's well, if you have really great stomach acid, your body can kind of take care of a lot of that stuff.
That's actually let's talk about that for a second. It's pissing me off.
Me too. It's driving me insane.
So perfect. So if you get a parasite, that means that the conditions, remember I talked about what is the equation of how you got to where you are and where you want to go. That means the body was able and ready to be colonized by a bug or a microbe of something. You could not fight it off. Your body was not ready and willing to fight off that invader. And so now you're colonized by this parasite or infection or bacterial infection, whatever it is. If you just kill, cleanse, you've done nothing to change the conditions for which you got it in the first place. You've only just, it's like when we went into Iraq, we bombed it, we took it over, and as soon as we left, it just collapsed again. What did we do there? We didn't change the preconditions, which is exactly what you're doing with all these cleanses and these killing protocols. You still have to, when you exit your cleanses and your killing protocols, whether it's SIBO, parasites, whatever, you have to support the architecture that makes it so you can't get colonized in the future. And one of the biggest things is stomach acid.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to just kill everything off in your body. There's oftentimes it's serving a purpose as well. So yeah, we have to have some context with these cleanses I mean, it's just, I don't know about you, but every time I open Instagram, someone's having a list of these, oh, this parasite's here and this doing this, and you need to buy my $300 detox cleanse kit. And people are doing it left and right. I'm like, oh my God, don't do that. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
never warranted and never needed, but a lot of the time, if we fix kind of these basic functions of the body, we don't necessarily need to go full on into these cleanses and detoxes and things like that. I hope you're enjoying today's episode with Steve Wright. Again, all the links of everything we talk about are down in the show notes, as well as our previous conversations. And I want to thank one more sponsor of today's episode. That's going to be Upgraded Formulas. Now, a mineral imbalance can absolutely create an issue with your thyroid and can show some adrenal stress, which a lot of people are dealing with these days. A blood test is only going to show you what's going on, like a snapshot in time, but a hair tissue mineral analysis is a really good way to know what's been going on over the last 60 to 90 days. My code YOGI12, or YOGI if you've already used that one before, will save you over at Upgraded Formulas on their hair tissue mineral analysis with a consultation. And they also have great magnesium, potassium, and mineral supplements if you choose to add these exogenously, which, by the way, I don't recommend. I recommend you get a hair test to see if you actually need these exogenous supplements before you just begin piecemeal adding them in. Again, code YOGI12 or YOGI to save. Thanks again for listening to today's episode, and let's jump back into it.
Yeah, again, I didn't say, killing bugs is a bad thing when it's warranted. It's just that, like you said, these, like if you've done more than one cleanse or parasite killing program in the last year, you're missing the point. You're not gonna, you don't get it. And you're gonna stay on this sort of, it's almost like the elimination diet paradox.
Mm-hmm.
You're not dealing with the underlying conditions, which is why you keep going like this all the time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. 100%. Yeah. And so, all right. So we've covered the HCl, why we need it, it's important for. What about digestive bitters? Will those do the same things as enzymes? What's your opinion?
So again, bitters are really cool. They've been around for centuries. They do stimulate like stomach acid production, a little extra enzyme release. They can help with all those things. That is not in debate. The the issue is how people use them and the type of bitters they use. So the word is bitter because they're herbs that are bitter. And in order to get the benefits, you need to swirl them in your mouth. You need to smell the herb. You need to trigger your nervous system, the reflexes through your tongue and through your central nervous system to act differently. Most people just take a few shots or a few drops, swallow it, and they're like, got it, better digestion. And that is not how that's not how you'd eat a herb if you found it in the wild. If you were out foraging, it's not how you would eat an herb in your salad. If you put, some sort of bitter herb in your salad, you would have to crunch it around in your mouth. You'd have to smell it. You'd have to taste it. And that's the part of Western culture or modern culture that we want to just take it fast and go and have it do its thing. And so, number one, most people don't use bitters correctly, even if they get the right bitters. And then number two, they don't replace lost enzymes, nor do they replace lost HCl. So could some of them be very helpful for gallbladder or liver toning and support? Yes. Could they be helpful for better digestion? Yes. But I think of them more like nice to haves rather than need to haves. And so somebody who's been healing for a really long time, they know a lot about herbs, they might have transitioned, they might have bridged off of HCl Guard or Holozymes, and now they might just know that a few squirts of somebody's bitter product is actually the perfect thing for them, and they know how to use bitters. I love that. I think that's perfect. But for the rest of us, I don't think we use them correctly. I don't think we know how to dose them, and they don't actually replace lost enzymes.
Got it. Yeah, that's the thing, that the digestive enzymes were super helpful for me because I just didn't have specific enzymes for carbohydrates or plants, any of that stuff. Now I've got them. I'm fine. I'm good because I eat locally, seasonally, all that stuff. And if I have something that my body can't tolerate, which does happen every now and then, I am taking the enzymes and I'll take them the next day as well. I'll take some before bed when my stomach starts to get a little bit more empty, kind of more in a systemic way. And then I will take them sometimes the next day if my stomach's not fully recovered. And I swear they're like magic. Like I always tell my clients, I'm like, keep them around for the holidays in case, like you want to
Totally.
have some food that you're not used to having. And you don't, if you start to feel like, oh, I'm going to pay for this, then this is kind of like your insurance policy. It works really well for people.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that. I mean, that's the goal, right? You
Right.
bridged out of a restricted diet into a much more diverse, much more in-season local diet.
Mm-hmm.
You got your body restarted and working just fine. And now they're just an insurance policy for when life gets tough, life gets exciting, or you just want to let loose a little bit.
Exactly. And then I don't think anyone outside of the carnivore community ever talks about this butter versus butyrate thing, but it's.
I actually just heard it. I was just at a show last week and I heard a doctor say it and I wanted to punch him. I'm like, you should know better. You should know better.
Well, and butter is a derivative of milk. And a lot of people that have gut issues are not necessarily going to be able to tolerate milk or butter in the first place. So eating large amounts of butter is not going to be on the table for a good amount of people, period. But yeah, I digress.
Yeah. Look, if it was doable, sustainable, and healthy, a lot more people would already be doing it. You're not like the first person to think of this idea, and whoever you heard it from wasn't the first person to think of it either. But there's been no butter diet that I'm aware of that's like got all these anecdotal healing stories for gut dysfunction and microbiome repair. Like that doesn't happen yet. And if it did, it's probably just a meme, like, fake news type thing. And part of the reason why is only a small percentage of butter is butyric acid.
Mm-hmm.
Most of that butyric acid is going to get broken down by the stomach, most likely, or lipase on its way down into your small intestine. And we need to get the butter, now I'm confused. We need to get the butyric acid as deep into the small intestine as we can, because your microbiome is actually at the bottom of your small intestine and mostly at the top of your large intestine. And so if the butyric acid is absorbed systemically through the butter, through the lipase, through the whole digestive process, which it probably is, you didn't get any therapeutic outcome from consuming the butter. And so, no, it's not sustainable. It's not going to have the same effect as supplementing with tributyrin X or some of the other high-end tributyrin products out there, like sunbutyrate. So just stop it. No.
Yeah. We're going to need to put that one to bed. And you mentioned the lower belly bloating. Is that always SIBO or can that be other things?
It can be 100% other things. It's, look, we're all very
so many people that message me and they're like, I have SIBO. I'm like, did you do a test? You're like, no. I'm like, but I've looked up the symptoms. I know I have it. I have a lower belly bloating and yada, yada. I'm like, well, you might not. I don't know. You might not.
Yeah, you could have fructose intolerance. 5% of the population, I believe, roughly 5% has fructose intolerance. You could have, you could have a fungal overgrowth. You could have a birth defect called a double loop, which is really rare. I think it's like, I'm not even gonna say the number, but it's like probably 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000, something like that. It's a rare thing, but it's not that rare that I haven't heard of it a number of times. People have done everything. They've done every cleanse. And I'm like, have you ever gotten an x-ray or a CT scan or anything? Oh, well, no, that's modern medicine. I can't do that. Well, no, we have physical deformities that we don't know about. Yeah. And so, if you haven't done a SIBO breath test, don't claim you have SIBO because you might not. There are fungal overgrowth tests. There are intolerance tests for other things. Getting imaging, endoscopies, colonoscopies, CT scans can also help you just make sure you have all the proper organs and all the proper loops and everything you're supposed to have. So lower belly bloat is a really obtuse sign. It doesn't tell you a lot. Like you'd have to list out exactly what you ate for the last 48 hours. Here's the other thing. Most people don't realize this, but depending on how long your transit time is, what you're feeling right now could be from like a couple meals ago, if that makes sense. And then gas and bloating is too much fermentation, right? So essentially, like something is fermenting your food rather than you absorbing your food or you eliminating your food. So that gas is kind of trapped in your lower belly. It's got to go up or down. It's got to get out of your body. And so that process is not instantaneous. Only a little bit of it goes like through the membranes and kind of like comes out our skin and through other ways. Like it most of it does have to go up or down. And so depending on how often you eliminate, that gas could be from a few meals ago. And then the last thing I want to say is that there's this thing called visceral hypersensitivity, and most people do not know about it. I had it and I didn't know for years, and it was really frustrating. In this condition, those of us who have it, which somewhere between 20 to 40% of people with IBS, they did these crazy studies, which I'm really glad I wasn't a participant in, where they lined a bunch of people up. They took gas pressure in a bag and they shoved it up their bum, and they filled them both with the same amount of volume of gas. The people with visceral hypersensitivity experience pain. They experience discomfort. The people without visceral hypersensitivity just experience distension and a little bit of like volume increase. And so if you're experiencing pain with your lower belly bloat, if you're experiencing discomfort, you likely also have a nervous system component that's related. It's called visceral hypersensitivity, which is basically describing the fact that your nerves are too sensitive to a change in pressure or distension versus a normal human. And for those of us, we have work to do in our nervous systems. We have emotional work to do. We have trauma work to do. We might have neurotransmitter imbalances that are contributing to it. And so there's, for those of us on that spectrum, we have a whole nother layer to this that won't just be solved by SIBO, because I remember what I said, the same amount of normal healthy gas injected in both humans' bums, one describes as the end of the world bloating, so painful, not good. The other says, oh, I think I'm a little full today.
Yeah, big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. Yeah. So don't try to self-diagnose all the time. I feel like people fall into that way too much. And every now and then we do have to draw that balance to rely on, modern medicine to help us a little bit. It's not the end of the world. It's more for, life-saving type of things. It can be useful. It's, you don't want to do it too often, like in the case of antibiotics or certain drugs that are overprescribed that ruin the gut. But there can be times where we need to rely on modern medicine,
Yeah. I just had a conversation with a friend of a friend who their friend was in the alternative space and was seeking, they knew a lot about medicine and supplements and things like that. And they were seeking help for lower belly bloat and IBS, digestive problems. They kept saying, I don't feel right. And the friend kept saying, get more imaging. And their main doctor was saying like, oh, we'll just try this, then try this. Let's just put you on you've tried the supplements. Let's just try some prescription drugs now. She never got any imaging. A year later, she finally gets imaging and she has ovarian cancer.
Oh my God.
If she had gotten imaging, modern medicine testing a year prior, you can eliminate these sort of, end of the line issues, right? Like this is a physical problem that manifests as lower belly bloat, but it was really just a tumor,
Wow. That's scary. Yeah. People, I think, we have to draw this balance. I think people have gotten too afraid to go to the doctor, but my hairdresser years ago, she had just not been to the doctor in years and years and was having all these a lot of pain every month. And I said, why don't you go see my doctor? And by the time she got to the doctor, her ovarian cancer was so progressed that she was gone within just a few months. I mean, it's really sad. And that could have been avoided by just going to the doctor regularly to be checked out, especially if you tried all the natural stuff and it's not working. I think it can be helpful. It's maybe not the first thing that you run to, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. Look, I've been talking about being the CEO of your health for like over a decade. So I'm not saying give your power up. I'm just saying, like you said, if you've been trying a lot of things, if you tried multiple diets, if you've tried multiple supplements and you're not getting anywhere, go back to the beginning assumptions. Is your body in working order to even accept these changes? It may not be. There could be something else going on. And so spending $1,000, even if it's out of pocket to get that imaging, can really let you go harder into the alternative stuff, or give you peace of mind to finally relax and be like, well, I'm not, terminally screwed here. I just have to figure out my emotional problems or my trauma.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And, on the kind of still the framework of the gut, I have a lot of people that now they are looking at things like their blood sugar when they start reintroducing foods or bringing foods back in, because they have seen stuff on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. And they're like, oh, I need to be concerned about my blood sugar. And I'm seeing a lot of people have blood sugar reactions to, or what, not necessarily blood sugar reaction. What they'll do is they'll have like, let's say potatoes, and they do it the way you're supposed to do it, have it at the end of the meal, go for a walk afterwards, but their blood sugar will go up, let's say like 40 points, and then it just stays at that place for hours on end. Does that mean that they should never eat potatoes? Or do you think that there's some sort of a digestive thing at play as well?
Yeah, well, I know you're teeing me up for something, but I'll make it more complex, because apparently that's all I'm doing today. But the short answer is, that's amazing that you're doing that digging. That's amazing you're doing that bio tracking and looking into how your body responds to certain plants. I would 1,000% say the makeup of your enzymes and your acid and your microbiome affect your blood sugar and your insulin resistance. Now, there's a lot of people that would argue with that, but how do we already have probiotics like Pendulum, who have studies showing a probiotic reduced HbA1c by almost a point over 12 weeks or something like that? We have preclinical data showing an approximate possible 18% reduction in that curve, in the peak of that curve, for people using Holozyme. Again, it's preclinical. I'm not saying this works for everybody. I'm not saying it works for anybody. I'm just saying there's data out there suggesting changing your enzymes changes how your food is broken down and absorbed. Therefore, it does change the insulin resistance. And then also changing the diet you eat on a consistent basis changes your microbiome, and that will also change your insulin resistance. How else would these probiotics and these prebiotics be doing that kind of thing if that wasn't for that? So no, I don't like the white potato has been eaten for centuries, if not, I don't even, what's 10,000 years? That's like a big number. I don't know, but it's the white potato is especially if you peel it, is a very neutral food. If that very neutral food is causing, an elevated 160, 180 number after eating that doesn't go back down, I would stick with it. Like, let's say you're not diabetic, let's say you're not in danger of harming yourself or anything. Like, obviously, be an adult. Nothing I'm doing here is medical advice. I'm just trying to help people be more CEOs. But if you're not in any danger, play with it for a week. Is it 1/4 of a potato or 1/4 of a cup of mashed potato? Is it when you put butter on the potato? Is it a whole 1 cup of potato? If you have 2 holozymes with it, does the peak get smaller? If you have 4 holozymes, is it even smaller? These are all really, really relevant data points that tell you, okay, if you can do a 1/4 cup, but you can't do a full cup of potato, you have a barrier in there around how much you can process before your body starts to freak out. Then if you add in the enzymes and it gets even better, like your blood sugar control gets even better, you also know you have a digestive component to the absorption and breakdown component that could be regulated more with that support. If none of that stuff works, then you have other stuff that suggests, no white potato for you right now, that you need to go back, maybe do some of your cold therapy stuff, do some other things. But here's the other thing. Rob Wolf wrote a book where he looked at this personally himself, and he found that his sweet potato and white potato numbers were different than his white rice numbers. So if you replicate this experience where you eat white potato all week long, every dinner for an entire week, and you're playing with the amounts and you're playing with the enzymes and things like that with your blood glucometer or continuous blood monitor, then you do a week of sweet potato, then you do a week of white rice, same amount each time, quarter cup, full cup, things like that. That data right there is going to tell you a lot about, is it the individual plant? Is it your body? Is it your digestion? Do you have a threshold? Because a lot of people have a threshold. Like, I can eat broccoli, but if you make me eat 3 cups of broccoli, I will be double over in bloating pain. Like, I have a threshold of which I can process and use. And so do people have thresholds with starch.
Right. So they have to start really small. That's what I always tell people when they're beginning to add these foods back in. You got to start super small and work your way up, and then add those enzymes in. That can be super helpful at allowing your body to, again, with digestive bitters, it's not necessarily going to replace those enzymes that you're missing that are going to help you to metabolize, break down all that good stuff with the carbohydrate. But the enzymes can be super supportive in that way, right?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Basically, like, if you change how much of the starch is absorbable and you change the rate at which it absorbs, you'll change the rate at which you utilize insulin and glucose in your body. And so enzymes are going to change the rate at which you break down food and absorb the food. And for many people, that will result in slightly better, potentially better blood glucose control. Not all the time, but it's possible. And I've seen it before.
Awesome. So it's worth a try. Yeah. And then what about people who eat something like, I don't know, lentils, and every time they eat it, it's just a nightmare. That was like my tipping point for starting carnivore, is that I was like, I need to have a healthy meal this week. I made a bunch of lentil soup in my crock pot, and I ate it, and it just literally made my stomach so messed up, the gas, the bloating, all that stuff, that I was like, screw it, I'm doing carnivore. And that was like the start of my 2-year carnivore diet, was a batch of lentil soup. So what about people in that boat?
Yeah, well, every legume, lentils are legumes. Every legume has a different mixture of types of complex carbohydrates in there. And so like raffinose is a type of complex carbohydrate that's part of the legume family that can cause a lot of gas and bloating. So in order to break down raffinose, you need cellulose and you need alpha galactase. If you have those two, you can really break it down pretty efficiently. Now, that's part of the reason why we have a healthy amount of that in Holozyme, because I too struggle with legumes, especially like black beans and red beans. Those are those used to be my nemesis. I'm starting to be able to tolerate black beans and pinto a little bit now. But even back in the day, lentils were trouble for me. And lentils are typically the safest. But what is super common is what you did and what I've done like too many times to count. My body would probably beat me if it was able to, but it's where you don't eat lentils or legumes for a really long time. And then you're like, oh, it's fall, let's make some soup. And then you eat a whole bowl of this very hearty, delicious soup that's full of like a cup of beans or a cup of lentils, and you haven't had any in 6 months. That is a really good recipe to feel miserable, because again, ideally, if you and your body were on the same page, you'd be like, hey, body, we're going to start doing lentils again. We're going to start with a quarter cup, and then we're going to go, a half cup, and then 3/4 of a cup, and then a full cup. And then, your body's like, okay, cool, I can manage that. Maybe I need a little support with some enzymes because it's been a while. But we hardly ever do that. We just go from 0 to hero. And the body just can't process that amount of the complex carbohydrates and legumes unless it's been doing it on the regular basis, which is why typically if you know of people who are eating a lot of legumes, and including indigenous cultures, it's like a daily thing. Right. it's almost a weekly thing. And so their microbiome and their enzymes have bloomed up to be able to handle those foods on a more regular basis.
Yeah, I feel like the whole conversation around microbiome, there is just got so much nuance to it. I mean, there's a lot of information now about how light impacts the microbiome and how, our bodies are more able to handle simple sugar fruits in the summer than they would be in the winter, obviously, because that's when those things grow. And so, people are always comparing us to like the Hadza. And I'm like, oh God, here comes one of these Hadza people again. It's like, yeah, these people like live outside on the ground, touching the earth constantly under the sun. Of course, they can eat a bunch of crap and not have a huge issue because they've got all that energy from earth, from sun to help their body process this stuff. And their microbiome is completely different. We can't look at how they metabolize certain things versus how we do, because it's like just not, you're not even comparing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know which the group that eats all the sweet potatoes on one of the tropical communities eats like 90% of their diet from sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, these people are outliers. Like if you washed your hands during the pandemic, like you don't get to compare yourself to the Hadza because they don't wash their hands and they stick their hands all over bloody carcasses. They use the bathroom and they're, touching each other. They're touching their kids. They're not washing their hands. So not even the same. It's almost like two different species in a way. Like stop.
It is.
Don't extrapolate that data, whether they're super hunter gatherers or whether they're super vegetarian or they're the Eskimos, up in the cold. Like, are you living in cold year round?
Are you living in an igloo? No, you're not. Yeah, there's so much context missing in a lot of these like studies. And well, look at this group of people that ate that and they were fine and they were healthy. I'm like, yeah, but that's not your context, So we always have to like look at context. When we look at studies, we have to look at who the study was done on. And a lot of studies are done in labs under artificial light, which completely changes glucose metabolism. And there's just so much we have to look at when it comes to our bodies and especially our digestion in the gut. It's not just this like black and white story. And I always feel like I can bounce these things off of you and get like a sensible, reasonable, science-based answer to take back to people. So it's always fun to have these chats.
Well, it's only because I feel like I tried to be like all those cultures. I wanted that stuff to be true. I wanted it to be true that I could go throughout life without taking any supplements. I wanted it to be true that, I was going to be a homesteader. I know I'm stuck in the Wi-Fi world and I don't think I'm leaving. And so it's only because like I wanted to get all the labs and then I didn't want to get any labs. And so because I've gone to all these extremes that I've kind of been like, I keep boxing myself back into the middle of yes and. It's if you've done improv, it's yes and. You never argue with the other thing. It's like true but partial. It's true for some context, but you gotta, like you said, really pay attention to what is your context.
Agree, 100%. Awesome. Well, I feel like we covered a lot of great topics today on the gut, and I'm sure we'll schedule another chat down the road. I feel like it's good to have like a gut health check-in every now and then.
It is always changing. It is always changing. So that's the cool thing about the gut. The gut and the brain are like the two areas of the human body that we still know almost nothing about, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the more I study circadian biology, the more I'm like, oh, wow, the gut really relies on the circadian system as well. And the circadian and the circannual system is hugely tied into our gut health. And so some issues people have with their gut can be really, really helped by improving those things, and the connection with the sun and outdoors and all that stuff can like make a huge difference for people. So I never want people to underestimate those things. But if you're doing all of that stuff, which is usually people get to me, they know not to talk to me or ask me questions until they have all these routines in place. But if you do and you're still struggling, I always kind of send them towards our library of videos. And I'm always thinking like, next time I talk to Steve, what corner can we jump into and open up? Always some interesting topics for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I appreciate you, Sarah, because you're always digging in, trying to find, the next layer as well, and the thing that is most in line with nature. So I super appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, as long as people keep sending me, I know you feel the same way, sending you emails and asking questions and having these things pop up, like you kind of want to help those people and understand for them, like, all right, well, why is that happening? And, what is going to be a better plan of action for these people? So I think that's what we're both on the same page, just looking out to see if we can help people in those ways.
100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Steve. As always, it was super fun to chat.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.